Um, Rather than a lecture, I really prefer it to be much more free-flowing. And I'll talk to you about the structure. They told me I have to stick to the structure, but I guess I'm an academic. I can do whatever I want. All right? So, and the other thing it says here, announce emergency procedures. All right? I'm not going to do the airline thing. Okay? It says here, in the event of an emergency, the assembly point once you exit the building. It says here, Clyde Car Park to the east of the building, down Arts Road and near Clyde Road. My suggestion is, get the heck away from this building into an open space. Actually, the closest car park is there. Island Field is the closest car park. I think by the time we walk over there, we'll all be dead. So be careful, all right? So know where we are. That location is probably the best location if something happens to us. Then the other thing, it says, introduce myself. I feel this absolutely strange. I'm going to do it the reverse way first. Explain the format. The length of the talk, probably about 60 minutes, maybe even less, all right? Give enough time for Q&A. I think that's the key thing. The main thing is, I do see some of my students in here. You're not allowed to ask questions, okay? You have to give the other guys the opportunity to ask me, all right? You already have me for the whole semester. Aren't you sick and tired of me, all right? And then the other thing is this. If I am bogged down by a question, I may actually ask my students to help me out, okay? So it'll be, as you don't know what to do with your lives on a Wednesday evening, you should be studying for your final exams, by the way. I can probably test you impromptu and give you cookie points. There you go. So it says here 20-minute question time. I think I'll be a bit more generous. I'll try to end a little bit early so that you guys can have, it's a very timely topic right now. I'm sure there's some interest. These are just simply my thoughts on how I think about this particular issue. I see one of my former students here as well, and you have, people might have some more information that I don't know of. That we want to share to everybody. So we'll just go around, have it a bit free-flowing. It says here, during the Q&A, I have to restate the question that you asked. So if you can, say it a bit loudly so the audience can actually hear it, okay? Who am I? 24601. There you go. No, kidding aside, I'm Professor Alex Tan. I'm the Professor of Political Science here at the University of Canterbury. I've been here since 2004 from Dallas, Texas, and where I still hold a research appointment as a senior fellow at the John Goodwin Tower Center for Political Studies at Southern Methodist University back in Dallas. And I also am the associate director of the New Zealand Contemporary China Research Center based in Wellington, amongst many hats that I wear. But more importantly, those are not important. I think, I guess, those things, you should not record this, yes. And pardon my French, those hats don't mean shit if I don't know anything, all right? So right now, I'm just going to share my thoughts, and then we'll take it from there, okay? Is that all right? So this is not the end-all, be-all answer to this, by the way. We might have different opinions on this. That's fine, because understanding North Korea is really crystal ball gazing. All right, there's very few information coming out, and many of them are really quite estimate. So it's quite an important thing for us to remember here. Okay, how do I do this? Oh, here. All right. Okay. Well. What if North Korea collapsed? Guys, I didn't really like this title, okay? But the organizer said I need to start what if. So I said, what the heck? I'll be controversial. What if North Korea collapses, right? Well, I floated this idea to my son, and I said, how about this? What if North Korea becomes more of a troublemaker? And then my son said, Dad, that's a reality. That's not a what if. All right? stick with this one. All right? So I'm coming with this one, but I'll have some thoughts about what is the likelihood actually of the regime actually collapsing. All right? Is there a likelihood? And at the very end, I'll put a little bit of what I feel are possible sources that may contribute to the regime's demise if it does happen. Okay? Again, bear with me on this because this is as much crystal gazing as we can do. All right? So just some thoughts. Some of my students know this, and it's part of your final exams. But some of the questions that we'll focus, our discussion today. All right? I'll finish my lecture, and then, so please don't jump in and ask questions, otherwise I won't be able to finish the 20 slides I have here. All right? So why is the Korean Peninsula a flashpoint in East Asia? Why is there such a stalemate right now? Okay? Why do there's, it's like, the North Korean problem has been with us, for not for the young kids, they probably don't know, but certainly for us oldies, the nuclear problem since Clinton, right? It has survived 3 presidents, right? And it's still here. So why? And what's the problem with that? Why are we having such a stalemate? What are the implications of a conflict if it so occurs, and if a collapse does occur? All right? Not only to the region, but what about us here in New Zealand? All right? Oftentimes, we here in New Zealand, we always say, it's too far. It's not our hinterland. It's not our backyard. But to be honest with you, a raging bushfire really goes really fast. Right? I mean, so this is a couple of things that I'm really thinking about how to bring it back and relate it to us over here. Now, what I'm telling you is a soup-up version of what I actually lecture in the Command and Staff College at Trentham. Okay? So every year I go up to Trentham and talk to our New Zealand Defence Force personnel, the senior staff course over there, and also the regional, some of our allies who come over here for these middle-ranking officers ready to get their stars, essentially. Okay? So I do this lecture often. I have to take out some of the conceptual pieces. Because these professional soldiers just want the facts, all right? So a little bit more soup-up version as far as you guys are concerned, okay? Now, this one is familiar to many of my students, okay? Certainly the foreign policy class, students in my foreign policy class. Before I go to the talk, let's understand this first. Factors to help us understand international relations. These 3 things I submit to you guys to think a little bit about. Opportunities, willingness, resources. Oftentimes in international relations, no international action occurs until all these 3 things come together. All these 3 things come together, and then the action occurs, right? Opportunity. Do you have the chance to actually take on this policy and make this policy? Take on this action. Willingness. For lack of a better term, do you have the political guts to do it? Right? Thirdly, resources. Do you actually have the material wherewithal to actually take on that action? Okay? Just think about it, guys. The example I gave in class, and I'll tell you as well, look at the issue of the Second World War and how the Second World War ended in Asia. You cannot tell me that Franklin Delano Roosevelt didn't want to end the war with Japan as fast as he could. Right? Is he willing? Yes, he is willing. Is there opportunity for him to end that war? Of course, yes. But what are the resources available for him? Island hopping. Isn't it? He wanted to end it as fast as he could, but he does not have the atomic bomb. Done deal. The bomb didn't occur, right? Now, it went to Truman. Now, is he willing? Yes. Is there a chance? Yes. Is there the bomb? 2 of them. Right? So without these things, okay, oftentimes, I submit to you guys, oftentimes you will not see a political action occur in the international arena. Okay? Now, more recent example for all of us. Okay? This has been happening. I've been, BBC News, lest I say Fox News, yuck. Right? CNN. What's the issue right now? Syria. Just think of the Syrian case. Okay? Think of the Syrian case right now. Everybody's pushing that line, and Fox certainly is pushing that line. Barack Obama said that the line would be crossed if Syria uses biological weapons. Yes? Today, Jay Carney came up, was being told about that. Oh, our allies have already found that there are traces of biological weapons used in Syria. The follow-up question is, but we don't know who's actually using it. Right? To be honest with you, in the Syrian situation, there are no angels. Okay? There are no angels there. So what did Jay Carney say? Well, there's no evidence. We need to do this. We need to do that. He's trying to what? Get out of it. Right? Tell me, is there an opportunity to do this? Of course. Does the United States have the resources? You bet your ass we do. Right? But willingness? No. No guts. There's no stomach to take on another fight. Not after 10 years of Iraq. Seriously, right? I mean, some of them may be missing. Some of them are missing. It won't happen. Okay? Now, another thought. Some of my first-year students should remember this. Growth, stability, security. If you talk about cardinal values of governance, bring it back to North Korea now. Bring it back to New Zealand as well. Doesn't any elite deal with these issues on a daily basis? Right? We want economic growth. Everybody wants economic growth. Nobody prays for recession. Maybe an opposition party might. Right? Right? Stability, political stability. All countries want political stability. Security, national security, need we say that? Economic security. Now the modern concept of human security, right? A comprehensive version of security. Now guys, unfortunately, there are trade-offs. Trade-offs among these different values right here. Can we maximize all of these values all at the same time? Are there costs? If you maximize growth, is there implication to stability? How does growth relate to security? How does instability relate to security? Just think about that. Some might say, oh, maybe we can do all of them at the same time. But really? It's a challenge. Okay? To find the proper mixture of all three is indeed a challenge that baffles political elites. Right? Look, China. Appropriate. Yesterday, 13th anniversary, right? 14th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square incident, right? Just look. Massive growth leading to 1989. What happened? Instability. Displacement of people, right? Corruption, what have you. Right? Now, what did they do? The first thing that they do, they clamped on the instability. Regained growth and security again. Right? Now, I'm not going to pass any normative judgment of whether it's right or wrong or whatever, okay? I'm just As a political observer, I'm only just saying, what do we observe here? And I'm just stating it to you and maybe rehashing, some facts and then saying, okay, take it or leave it, right? Now, think about this, guys. China, again, growth, massive growth, fast-paced growth. What's the first thing they do? Guns versus butter. More toys for the boys. Massive increase in defense spending. Massive. Now, having said that, guys, the United States defense spending still outspend number 2 to number 10. Okay? You actually add number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, you barely tie the American defense spending. It's 600 some odd billion. 600 some odd billion, guys. It's bigger than our economy. Okay? One sector only. It's incredible. Really, mind-boggling figures, right? So look, with growth, you increase your defense spending. But with increased defense spending, you think, what are you trying to do? I'm trying to increase my security. Yes, but what actually happens? Well, let's say China. What happens? Well, I'll tell you what happens. More directly, China grows, Japan starts getting worried, Philippines starts getting worried, Malaysia starts getting worried, everybody starts getting worried, and then what happens? They actually don't have any more security. Spending so much money, you actually become more insecure because you just triggered a arms race, isn't it? This is what we call security dilemma. Okay? The idea that you try to increase your security, but in the sense you're not buying more security because you actually just triggered this race towards arms. Okay? Now, the North Korean situation is the same, right? I mean, they want to do the security issue. Okay? There's not a lot of growth. Their stability is threatened. Okay? What did they do? Nuclear option. Right? Nuclear option. All right? I'll present that in the next few slides. All right? So just a couple of things for us to think about. You know, domestic politicians, when they think of what should I do? Okay? What am I doing? Right? So are we saying that Kim Jong-un is irrational, you know, by doing whatever they're doing? No. If you look at this, he's trying to do something to ensure his regime survives. You see? Okay? It may look really idiotic in our view, but his calculation is different from us. Okay? Why a flashpoint? Just a couple of lists, a laundry list of what I can think of. Okay? You may have some more. Okay? But I'm running out of space to put in a PowerPoint to ensure that the back people can actually see it. Well, the key thing is this. Korean War actually ended in an armistice. It's neither peace nor war situation, right? DPRK has already a nuclear program, right? In fact, this morning's news, they're restarting the Yongbyon nuclear facilities. Okay, they're starting to do it again. On and off talks about denuclearization, right? I mean, we've been seeing this for a long time. I mean, they threaten to do something, and until we help them out or the world help them out, and then when we help them out, they retreat. I mean, like this last time, the same thing all over again. Okay. Now, recent events. This is a big deal, right? Now, last year I had the honor of being able to represent New Zealand in a couple of Track 2 diplomatic talks. I was up in South Korea speaking with, as part of a New Zealand delegation on talking about bilateral issues, and one of the issues that we deal with is what's happening in North Korea, right? In fact, in October last year, the Vietnamese also came over to Wellington, and I was, again, had the opportunity to represent New Zealand as part of this delegation as well. And one of the issues that the Vietnam delegation and us are talking about is what we were asking them, what do you guys know about North Korea? Right? Because they're one of their allies, you know? So this is quite a big deal. And certainly for South Korea, this is something, particularly worrisome, right? The Cheonan incident, if you don't know what this is, 2010, a corvette, which is a naval ship, smaller than a frigate, was torpedoed, apparently, all right? The suspicion, and very strong suspicion, is the North Koreans did it, okay? 46 sailors died. The Yongpyeong Island shelling followed that, right? Okay? And then this year, with Kim Jong-un throwing a tantrum, again, well, no, I shouldn't say again, because that was mostly his father, right? So the son followed in the footsteps, right? So the DPRK actually declared, well, that's the end of it. The armistice is done. It's done for. We're actually in a state of war, okay? Should we take it seriously? Should we just dismiss it as somebody who, just a little kid who doesn't know anything with a bad haircut? You know? In reality, we can't. We can't, right? We actually have to be quite vigilant because you cannot tell me there is no possibility. Even 1% is a possibility, right? You need to deter. The effective deterrence is very important here. And make sure to tell them that if you do something, we will do your haircut for you, right? I mean, essentially, that's what you have to have a very strong message to them. Now, military. Look, guys, how can it not be a flashpoint? Look at the number of people in arms. Over 1 million people, right? South Island population. Scary. Now, look at the number of forces here, too. 1.6. These are, by the way, these are not reserves. These are active personnel. Okay? According to statistics, DPRK can call up to 40% of its population. The ones that are filled in their tummy and not hungry. Okay? Look, the US's forces here, too. 28,000. Mostly Marines, right? 35,000 in Japan. Right? That's a lot. We have 4 as part of United Nations. As part of our United Nations, we have observers. Well, one of the 4 is actually our defense attaché in our New Zealand embassy. Okay? But we are, we constantly have rotating people over there. Because I've met several people who have been rotated over there, okay, as observers. All right? So, to say that, are we in harm's way? Of course we are in harm's way. We're part of that United Nations enforcement thing, right? But now, I'm talking about just the number of people. Look at the military equipment there. The possible nuclear capabilities and biological weapons and all of that stuff. It is indeed a serious flashpoint in East Asia, right? Continued nuclear development and missile testing. You know what the scary part about missile testing? I was joking with my Taiwanese colleagues, right? And my South Korean colleague. We were actually using Skype one day. I was, we were trying to finish a paper. So a Korean colleague in Seoul during the height of this, around March, April, right? And then a colleague of mine in Taipei at that time, right? So we were just chit-chatting. Our Skype keep on getting cut off, right? Not between Christchurch and Taipei. It's Seoul and us. So we kept on saying, I think you're being bugged by North Korean, right? And then he said, well, you don't have to be worried. Are you guys worried? We asked him, are you guys worried? No, not really. Over in Seoul, South Korea, they're not really that worried, right? Well, then, then I asked my colleague in Taipei, are you worried? I said, no, it's very far. Oh, don't get too cocky. Why? The problem is this. The North Korean missiles are known to be so inaccurate that they may just actually accidentally land either in Shanghai, Hong Kong, who knows? Unintended consequences, all right? So this is one thing that we probably have to think about. Economy near collapse. if not collapse. All right? Spillover effects to neighbors. What are the spillover effects that are obvious? Refugees. The other day, China just actually sent back a couple of defectors back to North Korea, and the United Nations was actually very upset about it. Yeah. So spillover effects. What about this rally round the flag effect? What about this diversionary theory of war? If your economy is not doing well and your regime is threatened, let's find a war wherein our population can rally all behind us. Isn't it? You know, these things can happen, so that's one reason why I said we cannot say whatever Kim Jong-un says, we say, oh, no, it's not serious. You cannot. Because any miscalculation, you have to make the stakes so high that he actually will not miscalculate. Right? Leadership succession, holding it together. Now, there is some saying about this March incident. He's trying to impress the military. Because the military is the one that's holding up the regime. That's the only main support. You think the people are going to support him? No. They've been impoverished. Right? So it's the military that's holding it together. Now, here. Now, this is a bit more to my students. All right? The issue is this. Imperfect information, information asymmetry. Leads to what? Big miscalculation. We don't have enough information coming from the other side. The other side does not have enough information from us as well, right? So all our equations have assumed numbers, and they could be all wrong. That leads us to the action of taking war. You see what I mean? All right? So we actually have to be very, very careful that the message that that we are giving North Korea is, don't do it. Right? Because if you do something really stupid, there will be no more North Korea. Okay? I say that because I happened to have the opportunity to, again, represent New Zealand in 2009 in a multilateral, regional multilateral dialogue in Tokyo. One of the Pentagon officials over there said, well, you know what? We won't guarantee North Korean regime survival. Right there. They won't guarantee it. Of course, why would they care? Right? But North Korea knows this. So they have to make sure that they survive too. Right? It's a very, very tricky game between these all the players here. Again, this is a rehash again of what I've just had here. Weak economy, large military, but largely weak. Okay? Largely weak. It's the world's second largest working military museum. The first is China. Okay? China's improving. China's improving, all right? But certainly weak military. I'll tell you why. North Korean soldier looking across DMZ. What do you see? Very well-equipped South Korean forces. State-of-the-art aircraft, whatever. Seriously, right? What do you say? You turn around and say, oh my gosh, ours is so old. What do we do? Should we go up and race against South Korea and improve our military hardware? Where do we get the money? Very expensive. You know, John McKinnon, who is former Secretary of Defense, who is now Asian New Zealand Foundation Executive Director, was telling me personally, he said, yeah, these toys are very expensive. So what do? What's the cheapest option? Nuclear. It's cheaper. Is it irrational? No. It's strategic. Right? So, very concerned with regime survival, but they want to deal with the U.S. Even today, March, April, they want to talk to the U.S. The U.S. said what? No, we're not going to talk to you until you get rid of your nuclear arsenal or nuclear program, right? But why would the North Koreans do that when that's the only key to their own survival? You see what I mean? It gets to that point very difficult, that negotiation point very difficult. They don't even want to talk to South Korea, really. Because they know they can extract more resources from the US, mainly. Right? And ultimately, the US is the security guarantor of South Korea. Right? I mean, so there's this game that they're playing as well, okay, between the two Koreas. All right? Nuclear option as the cheapest way out. Nuclear option as a blackmail to other countries, and certainly doing it quite effectively, to be honest with you, right? We're getting tired of it, but, you know, what can we do, right? What are the challenges? Poor economic performance, highly centralized command, economy, food shortage, famine. Since the 1990s, it peaked out in 97, it's still coming back again, okay? Statistics, I'm sure many of you know this, or probably have heard of it. Statistics show that the average age group across South Korea and North Korea, for example, North Koreans are significantly shorter. For the same age, they're significantly shorter. They're not having enough proteins. Okay, they're not having enough proteins. Now, Songun, military first strategy, right? Everything goes to the military first. Why? Stupid? No, strategic. Because that's that's their key to power. That's the key to the Kim family power, right? They have to make sure that the military is happy, otherwise they're gone, right? So it's an issue of political survival for them. Now, this one is quite interesting. A couple of things I will show to you, right? It's really quite interesting. Very different estimates. Samsung Economic Research Institute says that about 21.5 billion, right? But 2011 estimate, I checked out, was 12.4, so very, very small. And look, 505 per capita, this is nominal GDP, right? New Zealand has about this, right? And we have 4 million people, they have about what? 14, 15, almost 20 million, about that number, right? They've, more people than us, right? Compared to, look at this, compared to South Korea. South Korea is 1.15 trillion. It's a G20 country. Right? It's unbelievable, to be honest with you guys. Right? Looking at it from the perspective of New Zealand, it's still unbelievable what happened in East Asia. Right? A country we helped, when our soldiers left, it was a mess. And now it's a lot bigger than us. If you've been to Seoul, Korea, have you tried how fast their Wi-Fi is? It makes our Ethernet look like a joke. Really fast. Really fast. Have you been to Incheon Airport and see how impressive that place is? It used to be MacArthur's Marines landed on there, right? The Incheon landing. The airport is impressive. It makes Auckland's international airport look like a provincial airport. Well, many airports make Auckland look like provincial. Right? Just think about it. Now, with inflation, this is the interesting part. North Koreans are actually signaling no confidence in their own economy. Why? They want you to pay them in Chinese currency or US dollars. If this estimate is correct, 21.5 billion, again, it's a guesstimate, right? Almost 10% of the money floating around is foreign currency, right? Now, the North Koreans knew this is happening, but they can't do anything. The exchange rate, official exchange rate for US dollar to the North Korean currency is 130 to 1. 130 North Korean won to 1 US dollar. Do you want to know what the black market rate is? 7,350. 7,350. Tell me, would you save in North Korean won or would you save in US dollar? Even an idiot knows what that calculation looks like. Right? And this is increasing, by the way. According to a friend who just recently been to Pyongyang, right? She told me this. You bring in RMB, good. but they actually like Uncle Sam better, especially Benjamin Franklin, right? Because of that exchange rate difference. Huge exchange rate difference. Okay? Now, to me, that's a signal. That's a signal of confidence. They can say whatever they want. The propaganda can be whatever they want. But if you're not willing to hold your own currency, you don't have confidence in your own economy. Simple as that. Isn't it? Agriculture experiments happening, essentially they're slowly trying to privatize, allowing farmers to keep some of their goods they can sell. It's still an experiment, okay? It's still an experiment. China started that way. It took a long time for it to actually get to where it is, okay? Now, the issue for me is this. Long way to go, but there's a limit to it. There's always a limit to it. From an economist perspective, this is a great idea. Certainly a great idea. From a political economist perspective, there's also a lot of warning signs. What happens when you allow farmers to start keeping their goods and sell on a barter or open market or whatever, on some kind of a private market? You start creating two-tier market, number one. Number two, you start creating people who will actually be richer. So then the people who are working in these state-owned agencies or state-owned enterprises feel like, oh my gosh, how come these farmers are earning more than we do now? You see? The seeds of instability starting to get in. Remember, you do this because you want what? Economic growth. But you're also, at the same time, it's a double-edged thing. You're starting to sow the seeds of instability. Isn't it? China happened. You know, there's a recent guy, a general that went to Beijing, learning lessons from how China did their experiment, 40 years late or something, right? It's very difficult because you actually have to deal with this issue that you might actually bring unwanted, unintended consequences that may open up society and challenge your regime. And nobody can tell me that it can't happen. Right? It's always possible. It's always possible. So why is there a stalemate? Problem in East Asian region is that major actors have different interests and priorities. In the six-party talks, the participants have all quite different views on how to solve the problem. Because everybody has their own agenda. Right? Everybody has their own agenda. US, China, Japan, South Korea, North Korea, all have different views, objectives, and strategies. How do we get there? How do we even begin to start talking again? Should we actually let, the American situation is that the US want them to, give up their nuclear program. China is not too sure that it should force its ally to give it up. Right? According to some, you said China tried to convince. Recent news. China tried to convince North Korea. Tried to. Right? Try to. Students always say that. I try to study very hard. Therefore, I need to get an A. My question is, how hard did you try? Isn't it? How hard did you try to convince North Korea? If you've been in, it's very revealing, the Chinese negotiation stuff. They always take the moral high road. They always do. Very standoffish, non-committal, always moral high road. I got so sick and tired of listening to it. I said, what? You're kidding me. Seriously. Guys, what this is called? What our grandparents say? Too many cooks spoil the broth. That's essentially what it is. It's just too many actors with before I examine, let me go to this. And my students know this part. They've read my paper on this. And I hope so. I'll test them again anyway. All right? Couple of things. This idea of win set, veto players, equilibria, this is boring stuff, but the idea here is this. If you think of this win set, okay, this win set is simply a set of acceptable policies across different partners, right? Okay, set of acceptable policies. What are veto players? These are people who can actually block the implementation of policies. These are veto players, all right? As the way the rules are set up right now in the six-party talk, each of these six-party members are veto players because they operate on unanimity, right? They operate on unanimity. Equilibrium point, where you settle, where this, whether it's a good position or not, that's a different issue, but it's a settling point anyway, right? Wherein nobody has any incentive to move away, okay? And, and then again, I want you guys to take a look at this. Now, just a couple of pictures here, all right? Here, what do I mean by this? If you look at two policies right here, more or less of policy A, policy B, these probable set right here, this is the ideal point of A, okay, of player A. Any point, if you're the only actor, you don't worry about it, right? I mean, anything, you can set your own point that you're comfortable with, right? This is sounding really corny now, certainly to my students. If you're going on lunch, and if you're alone, it's easier to decide than when you have two people, right? Right? It's easy to decide if you're going with your wife. Just ask your wife, right? I mean, that's essentially what it is, right? But imagine if you have 3 people, 4, 5, 6, and throw in a vegan and a vegetarian, right? Can you still decide? Gets harder, right? Then what happens? If you have 2 players, that can happen. These are the set of possibilities right here for A. That's A's ideal point. That's B's ideal point, right? These are the set of possible options for them. That intersection right there, called win set. Acceptable for me. Okay? These are acceptable for me. Any position there, I'd probably be okay. But this is assuming what? A and B are co-equal powers. Right? The distribution of power between 2, pretty much the same. More like a husband and wife, I hope. Right? Okay? Now, but what if you have a player that's stronger? Right? This time around, what this guy is trying to do is that maybe I was here originally, but now I want to pull back. I'm here now. Then that set gets smaller, right? And you can certainly get even, if you're stronger, you can keep on pulling that thing and pulling it so that you're, picture a bully that will, or a very strong agenda setter. Okay? I want this to happen. I'm going to pull you to my ideal point. My compromise is the least. You compromise a lot more. That happens, right? In real life too. Okay? So think about this when you have asymmetric strength as far as the players are concerned. This could happen. Okay? Think about this possibility. Now, what if I add a 3rd player? Oh my gosh. All of a sudden, there you go. That's the point of agreement. Gets even more difficult. Simply, this is just a graphic presentation of the idea of what? Too many cooks spoil the broth. At this point, there is no incentive for anybody to move anywhere. Because this is a comfortable equilibria. But it may not be the best for all. It's just that right now, if I move out, I may be actually worse off. You know what I mean? So why should I make the first move when I may actually be worse off from that first move? Got me? Everybody follow that logic? Right? So the incentive is to do what? Do nothing. Status quo. That's where we are. Right? Because the only way it will work is all of us move together. We cannot move sequential. All right? We have to move together. But we can't. It's a game of chicken. Who moves first? And then when you move first, oh, you'll be the sucker, right? And we don't, and that's the situation we face, where we are in today, to be honest with you. In a simple graphic representation, guys. Okay? What are some of the South Korean concerns? I have, I see some colleagues here who are from South Korea. If, correct me if I'm wrong, certainly, in the discussion you can add more or take away some, all right? Oops. denuclearization, peace and security, essential. South Korea will not, Republic of Korea will not be where it is today if it was not a stable situation over there, right? Uneasy stability, right? They tend to see this problem as a Korean issue. That's my read on it, okay? That's my read on it. They tend to see this as a Korean issue. Koreans should solve it amongst themselves, right? They're very concerned that they'll be left out of the talk. They are. Because the North Koreans don't want to deal with South Korea directly. Okay? Wants to focus on East Asian security, mainly on the nuclear issue in North Korea. That was what I got out in that multilateral regional security framework talks. Okay? They want to keep it there. Anything more, they feel that you're bringing the focus outside of this nuclear issue, and it might water down the whole security issue in East Asia. For the South Korea, the crux of East Asian issue right now is still the North Korean peninsula. For them, rightly so. Because they are faced with, this threat of destruction. Okay? For the other players, they have different view. Right? If you talk about risk-taking, the South Koreans probably are the ones who are less risk-taking. Of the players that we have involved here, the most risk-taker is the United States. Why? It's a non-resident power. Simple as that. Right? Simple as that. Everybody else is a bit careful how to deal with it because they might get hit by these very inaccurate missiles. All right? So here, wants to focus on East Asian security, mainly US-led multilateral security framework. US-led. Right? Major ally. Can you imagine what this guy looks? How does he feel? Right? How does China feel? You can say, oh, China can be magnanimous, China can do this. Come on. What are we talking about? Realpolitik. Power-centric. State-centric. Right? EU can talk about whatever liberal thoughts they have on institutionalism and the benefits of economic cooperation. In East Asia, it's still realist thinking. Right? Power talks. It's still very state-centered politics. Japanese concerns. China's rice. They're feeling really out of place. I'm serious. Abe was just in Africa. Right? They're feeling so out of place. Why? 20 years of economic stagnation. Accelerated by 2008 global financial crisis. Right? It's not only the decline of Japan, but also the rise of China. The gap becomes big. And now, everybody's tied into the Chinese economy, and Japan is like left outside. Right? North Korean nuclearization, economic stagnation, this is a big thing for Japanese, right? For the Japanese. A lot of abduction occurred. North Korean agents going to Japan, abducted people, and then went back. It's really crazy stuff, right? Broader issues besides just Korean Peninsula. The issue for them is what? Access to resources. Sea lanes of communication that should be open, right? Why? It's a very trade-dependent country. Can you imagine if the Taiwan Strait was shut down? Can you imagine if the South China Sea becomes a Chinese pond? Who gets hurt? Japan. Right? The choke points. It's really strange, right? It's almost like we're talking 19th century politics. Right? Naval expansion, Alfred Mons, this idea of sea power, right? Look, this is very big right now, still is. Okay? Wants to expand security framework to not only East Asian countries. Japan has been knocking at our doors and the Aussies' doors forever. Come and be with us. because they're feeling left alone. They want other countries to support them, right? The Malaysians are not too happy, of course, because they feel that Australia and New Zealand, we're not Asia. How come we're in East Asia framework initiative, right? But somehow it's got expanded. We're in, right? And in this sense, actually, we, New Zealand, we're actually we're always seen as the honest brokers, right? We are. And a colleague of mine at Asian New Zealand Foundation and I are writing a paper. What's the basis of this honest broker perception? Why are we viewed that way when we actually don't have that much military to talk about, economic trade, but why are we viewed that way? Hey, we can capitalize on it. Why not? China's interest. Since global financial crisis, taken more regional global role, more assertive in its own territorial claims, certainly. Have you guys seen China's picture of its territorial claims of the South China Sea? It's called the 9 dashed lines. The 9 dashed lines essentially goes through very close to the coast of Vietnam, Malaysia, it goes like that, and Philippines. The idea there is, that's our lake. The danger is, lots of trade goes through it. Lots of trade goes through it, right? Why did all of a sudden people got interested in that place? Supposedly there's oil and gas. Right? That's what people say, but nobody has ever found really much. And some people say that what they found is mainly to the coast. Okay, coast of the Philippines, coast of Vietnam. Okay, and a lot of cable cutting happening. Chinese vessels cutting exploration, cables and stuff like that. Serious stuff. Right? I was in Ho Chi Minh City. Again, having represented New Zealand in November. Oh man, that was a big dialogue. Even the Russians were there. Really huge, and our contingent is contingent of me and our second in command in our Hanoi embassy. So we were just doing the reporting, but they actually gave us an opportunity to be, they asked me to be a panel chair as well. So not too bad for a tiny country. We got some presence there. That's good. More assertive, rise of nationalism. What can I say here, right? I mean, geostrategic perspective, survival of North Korea is important for China's security. This is very, very true. Does China want a unified Korea allied to America near its border? No. Right? Why should it? Right? That's the bad news about Korean unification, because the reality is the Chinese are worried. So what does China do? Try to convince North Korea. Correct? Then tell the Americans, you know what? We've actually tried. Then the Americans say, well, try a little bit harder. Okay? In the meantime, this kid is throwing a tantrum, right? The kid wants to go, and then, the two big boys are talking amongst each other. This little kid said, okay, I'm not getting anything. I'll start a missile test again. America gives something, China gives just enough. You know what it looks like? Chatham House rules, guys. It feels like, to me, think of a drug pusher and a drug addict. Okay? You're just giving enough for it not to kill that guy. Okay? But not enough for him to be awfully strong. There's no incentive for China to make North Korea too strong either. Because now it has nuclear power on its border. But it cannot let it die. Then it has definitely an enemy. You know what I mean? From a geostrategic perspective, it's very complicated. So look, guys, just go through this. Go through this and see how difficult is it to get away from that stalemate. Complex. So again, too many players. Preferences are not converging. Everybody going their own way. Status quo emphasized. Okay? Status quo is emphasized right here. U.S. insists that any negotiation with North Korea requires North Korea to give up its nuclear program. That's already a no-go for North Korea. Because that's the only thing that will bring you to the table, and then you want me to take away. Then what brings you to that? Then why will you come to the table? You know what I mean? Again, it's that idea of, why should I make the first move without any guarantee that I will not be worse off after actually make this first move? Got it? It's a crazy thing. But that's, but it's, I don't think I'm way too off the mark here so far, right? Implications to the region: huge militaries, nuclear weapons, massive destruction. Need we say more? Okay? This is crazy stuff that can happen there. Potential for escalation, spread of the conflict, spill over. Right? Japan will not stand by there, correct? See what's going to happen. If an open conflict happens, do you think the United States will not use its forces in Japan to engage? If the United States uses its forces in Japan to engage, it gives North Korea the alibi just to hit Japan as well. Then you just escalated the damn thing. Right? As simple as that. If Japan comes in, China will say, well, I certainly won't let North Korea go away. I'll come in. Another Korean War. All from miscalculation, too. Economic destruction of the region, that's the obvious one. Refugee flood. Just think about those costs. Right? Guys, I'll say this, and I've actually told Vice Admiral Straw this. In 2009, I was invited to be in the discussion towards the New Zealand Defense White Paper. Jerry Mateparai was still CDF then. And in the sideline, I actually talked to Admiral Straw and said, you know what, I presented this issue on Northeast Asia as well. And I said, we are actually not scot-free here. If something should so happen in East Asia and Northeast Asia, look guys, we have a lot of New Zealanders of Korean descent. We have an obligation to our citizens. We need to evacuate them. That's our commitment to our citizens. No man behind. Right? That's the basic thing. So we don't want to see this happen because it will stretch us as well. Way too hard for us, right? We're a small country with very tiny resources. But we do have a commitment to multilateral peace. That's our commitment as an honest broker, right? So, is military conflict possible? My current read right now, very low. Okay, why? Just go through this. Opportunities, willingness, resources. Get your calculator and calculate that, right? To me right now, this is my conclusion. The expected cost is higher than the expected utility. He won't do it. Kim Jong-un. North Korea, we too dangerous because they know. What's the cost? They could actually fully collapse. It's very easy. Just extend the war longer. That's all you need to do. Extend the war longer, it will collapse. The supply chain will go, everything will go. Right? They don't even have enough money. China will not have enough foreign exchange reserve to help them out. They cannot sell those treasury bonds fast enough, and they will not do it for North Korea. Right? Resident actors are risk-averse. Non-resident actor, singular. More willing to take risks. So the key thing is, for us, while we are not resident, for us in Australia to keep on talking to the US, keep your cool. Keep your cool. We actually have a representation in North Korea. Our ambassador to the Republic of Korea is also seconded to Pyongyang. Okay, Patrick Rata currently, who's the ambassador, right? So, keep your cool. Will North Korea start a fight? Not yet. Not now. Okay? Too many at play. This is an overdetermined equation. Too many unknown variables, too few equations to solve. He won't do it. I don't think. Right? Then again, tomorrow I may be wrong. Okay? What is likelihood of North Korea collapse? Possible sources, external, internal. Now, these external is quite obvious. If the war breaks out, I think they'll collapse. All right? The U.S. will definitely take them out. It doesn't have to take the U.S. The South Koreans will take them out. Okay? The South Korean forces are some of the best in the world. All right? I mean, they'll take them out. But North Korea, you know, I mean, North Korea is really quite paranoid about its own survival. I mean, it's like an animal or any person trapped in a corner, and really, I have no more things. What can I do? What more can I lose? I have nothing, right? So we have to just to make sure that they don't miscalculate. Here, internal, economic and military, right? Economic reform can have unintended consequences. I mentioned that. Open up society that may lead to dissension. Okay. Economic decay can also lead to problems. Why? Economic decay can eventually hurt the corporate interests of the military. If you don't have enough dollars to go around to purchase equipment, what do you do? Right? If the military feels their privileged position is starting to be to be eroded, what do you do? And when your regime actually stake its legitimacy on brute force, right? China has changed. China today stakes its legitimacy, its political legitimacy on what? Economic performance. As long as it delivers economic performance, they believe it will keep dissension at bay. Now tell me, that formula, to be honest with you, is not originally Chinese. That formula is any authoritarian regime, particularly the little dragons. Korea with Park Chung-hee, Chiang Kai-shek, and Uncle Lee Kuan Yew. In Singapore, that's what they do. They stake their legitimacy on economic performance. As long as I keep performing well, I should keep dissension at bay, right? China's doing that right now. North Korea is still not there. It's still using that brute force to enforce. It'll take a while for it to get to the economy. The problem is, it's a Pandora's box. It is definitely a Pandora's box. Economic decay can also lead to problems affecting it. Issue here is strong relationship between guns and butter. More butter, more guns. Less butter, less guns. But the funny thing is, if you actually buy more guns, you could have less butter. Ask George Walker Bush. Too much guns. Now, the U.S. is today's news, right? Highest number of people in food stamps ever. 47 million people in food stamps. In Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, 1 in 4 are in food stamps. 1 in 4. But we have lots of shiny guns. That's the problem, isn't it? There's a cost, always a cost. You buy more security, but that security is going to hurt your growth. You buy more security, but you're not necessarily more secure. To be honest with you, what's the United States so worried about one ancient aircraft carrier that China has when it has 13? Why so worried about that? Right? I mean, the 7th Fleet can blow the Chinese Navy to smithereens if it wants to. But they keep on buying. They keep on using it. They're now talking about what? 21st century carriers. 21st century carriers. You know those carriers, the population of those carriers, probably invert cargo. Isn't it? They probably use more energy than invert cargo. Right? Just the airplane flying up and down, you know, I mean, lots of stuff, right? Is it likely that it will collapse? Is it likely that North Korea will collapse? slim. Why? One of their supporters would not let it collapse. That's my call. Okay? It might teeter towards collapse, but there are vested interests there. To be honest with you, South Korea has a reunification ministry, right? A reunification ministry. South Korea certainly wants reunification, right? But is it actually ready if it does happen? It took Germany a long time, and Germany is a much larger economy. Germany was the third largest economy then when East Germany collapsed, right? When East Germany collapsed, seriously, right? And East Germany, didn't have to deal with famine in East Germany. You're dealing with much more chaotic stuff, correct? And then the other thing is, I think the South Koreans can learn a little bit from the West Germans on this. Willy Brandt's Ostpolitik, making sure that Russia agrees. All right? Over the years, West Germany has been so savvy in dealing with Soviet Union. Business, investments, aid, what have you. Okay? An independent foreign policy. South Korea is a little bit too tied to the American alliance. The Chinese are not too sure. Even the South Koreans know that. Because with the Cheonan incident and with the Yongpyong incident, China did not go out and condemn North Korea. My colleagues in South Korea told me as much. And a former colleague of mine in the States who now works for South Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs Diplomatic Academy told me as much. We know now. We have to take care of our own. That's the reality. It's all state-centric politics, and stuff like that. Distant water, raging bushfires. Why should we care? We're in Middle Earth. We only have to worry about the hobbits. We're so far. Look, our top trade partners. Look at the statistics, okay? I'll tell you, 2011, this is MFAT data, 40% of our total exports, 43 imports, 2011. That's a lot. You know why I put this in? To give you guys a bit of comparison. In the UK, when UK announced that it's going to join the EEC in 1961, we were at 53%. By the time they got in, it's 36%. Okay? Imports 43, it's 30%. Now, why is this relevant as a comparative data for me? At 36%, it took us a long while to deal with that problem. We cannot find new markets fast enough. You know what happened? 1986. Right? We cannot find our markets fast enough to replace the UK market. Now it's much lower. The UK as a percentage is so much lower. But you know what, guys? We crashed in 1986, 87, 88. 87, right? October 87 when we start crashing, right? Okay? We crashed in 87. In 1970, we were exporting this much and importing this much from the UK, right? But the UK in 1961 announced that they're moving EEC. They actually weaned us. We have 10 years to be weaned, and yet we still crashed. You see where I'm going on this thought now? I'll tell you, if that bushfire happens, we don't have time to wean. At 40%, we will crash. I hate to sound like we're all about money. No. It's our economic security. It took 10 years to wean down to 36%. But we will not have time to do that if something happens, because immediately it will get cut off. How much does Fonterra sell as far as dairy milk to China? Just think about it. I don't know how much Auckland will be hurt, but I'll tell you, Canterbury will be hurt. Seriously. The danger for us right now is that actually our trade is not diversified. Right? But the problem is, where do we diversify? Where else do we diversify? You know, I mean, we actually have a lot of connection. It's an issue of them buying our stuff. America produces a lot of milk. We produce a lot of milk, but, you know, China's wanting a lot of our milk. We can't even supply the whole Chinese market. Serious. If none of us ever taste a sip of milk, we still cannot supply the whole Chinese market. Imagine how scary that is.
No, it's not scary. Why are you scared of it?
No, it's scaring the thought of the market being so huge and mind-boggling.
If we never ate anything for a whole year and we sent it all to America, we couldn't even feed it for breakfast.
Well, maybe. That's true as well.
You know,
Yeah.
it's nothing. We're not even a flea on the
Well, I hope we don't, you know, maybe we may be nothing, but I would argue that we are something. All right? All right. Economic shock for New Zealand if Northeast Asia is unstable. Right? Shock. Okay, I'm using this word, shock. Because how do we, 40%? It's just, we can't, you know, replicate that market too quickly. We are distant water, but I think, hey, we have to be prepared for it. Always be vigilant. Always be vigilant. There you go. That's my talk. And 20 minutes.